that haunts your house.
Hello, baby.
Just trying to see me naked, you lesbian pervert.
What about them titties for me?
Come on, tonight is about feeling like kids again. Maybe that can apply to old friendships too?
Yeah, you won't feel ashamed for inviting the weird girl over.
No way. Oh, Mom, you're such a shrimp. How do I look? Like a big pussy. You are not screwing on my bed. Just give it like 20 more minutes.
Why don't you play with us?
Come on, Ouija board?
Aren't you curious
About
what the spirits have to say?
Words just aren't going to work in this scenario.
Don't do this! Stop fucking me! You gotta go! You gotta... I'm so sorry!
It'll be alright.
No, it's not! It's not!
Hi, this is Tony Odell from Chopping Mall, and you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to episode 262. And this time we're going to have a Babysitter Massacre. But it's with a heavy heart. Before we get on to that soon-to-be classic, or it's 2013, I believe. It's a long-time classic. I'm afraid I have to report that sadly, Erik is no longer with us. No, he's no longer on the show. And I don't mean he's gone from the show completely. He's not with us this time. So long-time listeners will know that Erik has a history with Turkish prisons. And I'm sad to report he's broken into yet another one. So he can't join us at the moment because they're trying to tempt him out with Junkie Kit Kats. We hope he will be back for the next show, but we can't guarantee it, although he probably will be back for the next show. Now, we did try and get a suitable replacement for Erik for this episode, but unfortunately we had to settle for David C. Millay. So thank you for joining us, David. How are you doing?
That was a nicer welcome than I expected, so thank you guys. I appreciate that.
No, you're always welcome back on the show, David. What was the last... Well, I say that because didn't you almost give Erik hernia, not a hernia, some kind of fit, wasn't it, with bloody murder? Was it bloody murder? No, Axum. Of course it was Axum, wasn't it, that you were responsible for? That you were like the Yoko Ono of the Hysteria Continues.
Yeah, when you guys covered bloody murder, I was still a little too nervous to go live, so I think I pre-recorded some stuff and sent it in.
Ah, okay.
But then, yeah, I was live with you on Axum. Actually, I wrote this down, episode 134, back in January of 2017.
Yes, I wonder if it is a kind of coincidence that Erik's broken into that Turkish prison, considering you're back on the show, David. Is this your third appearance with us?
It's the second live, but I've kind of sprinkled in some audio for different episodes here and there over the years.
Okay, well, let's say it's the third time, but third time's the charm. Well, maybe because we are covering. Because normally we as people listening to this kind of know, the Hysteria Continues, we tend to favour kind of classic era slasher movies. And we don't tend to cover newer movies, certainly not within the last 10 years, although that's not completely true. We've covered, Malignant and other films in the past. So we do cover some of the new ones, but this is going to be a bit of a departure for us, although in some ways not a departure at all, actually, because it's very much within our wheelhouse. And any film called Babysitter Massacre is going to be up our alleys to some degree. So, we'll get onto that as our main feature in a little bit. But Nathan, are you sending thoughts and prayers to Erik in prison?
I'm sending him postcards.
Postcards? Are they...
postcards.
Sort of Suddenly in Michigan or whatever it was. Whatever, I can never remember the name of that thing. I do rue the day that I ever introduced you and Erik to that bloody thing, but anyway.
Are you talking about possibly in Michigan?
That's the one. I can never remember its name. I wonder why.
I don't know. It's such an unforgettable film. I don't know how you don't remember it, Justin.
That is true. But unfortunately, of course, the other thing, dear listener, that we're missing is Erik's soundboard. So, what can I say? What can I say apart from I have my sound? Well, what are we going to do? What about Erik's joke of the week? David, have you prepared a joke of the week for us?
You got the right person. I don't have anything prepared, but guaranteed I can come up with something terrible off the top of my head.
Well, it's what Erik does every week, so yes.
No, I'm pretty sure he takes weeks ahead of time to come up and craft the amazing jokes that he makes for you guys.
He does make being unfunny look incredibly easy. So, yes. And Joseph, how are you doing? You're looking forward to covering a Babysitter Massacre?
Actually, I was kind of like hung up on the weight differential with having Dave on. But as for Babysitter Massacre, we'll see.
We'll see. Okay. One thing I will say about Babysitter Massacre, there were precious few babysitters in it. Is one of my takeaway, the hot topic points.
I don't remember seeing any babysitting at all.
We'll get further into that. If you look at it as like it's almost like a sequel to a movie that never happened. Like, because they were all babysitters, but then something happens in the past, and then now they're not really, in the movie that we watch. So, but we'll get to that later.
Okay, yes, absolutely. Well, let's, as a time-honored tradition, we'll have a quick chat about what we've been watching recently. So, David, have you seen any other classics you want to tell us about?
Classics is a good word to use because I've been on a strong David Cronenberg kick ever since Crimes of the Future came out.
Have you seen Crimes of the Future?
Yes, I did. I had to drive a little ways away to find a theater that was actually playing it because, as most of his movies are, they don't get a wide release. So I was able to see it, and it's everything I hoped and prayed that a Cronenberg original would be. I mean, I love A History of Violence, Eastern Promises, his non-horror movies, but I really was looking forward to him returning to the horror genre in an original script and just being as weird and messed up as he is. And I'm telling you, I think he's 79 right now, he has not missed a step at all. As I mentioned in my review for Dark Glasses with Dario Argento, age is just a number. It's just sometimes some people still have it and some people don't.
Well, exactly. And I mean, I would probably talk about Dark Glasses because I reviewed it recently. But I mean, just is it Nathan and Joseph? Or I'll ask you in turn, actually, because I know it gets a bit confusing. But what about Nathan? Have you seen the new Cronenberg movie yet?
I have not, but I like They Came From Within, a.k.a. Shivers.
That is my favorite Cronenberg movie, definitely.
Excellent. Okay. What about you, Joseph? Because I imagine you've got a soft spot for Cronenberg, or am I wrong?
No, I love Cronenberg. I haven't caught it. I really want to see it. David, is there any time travel involved in this?
It is set in the future. I forget what year they say exactly, but no time travel or anything like that.
I had it in my mind that there was something like a time crimes type deal going on with it, but I still want to see it because I do like Cronenberg.
If you just go by the trailer, you're going to have no idea what it's about. The basic plot is that in a future, humans no longer feel pain. And for some reason that like dulls their sex drives, and then surgery becomes what they call the new sex, kind of like Videodrome they call the new flesh. So it's a weird thing where they do performance art surgeries and just to basically get off, because like with all Cronenberg movies, it's all about getting off in the end.
You mentioned Dark Glasses, the Dario Argento, the new kind of giallo-esque. I guess it is a giallo, isn't it, movie? But I mean, what was your take on that, David?
In a brief summary, the first 30 minutes are a return. The closest thing he's done to a return to a giallo since Sleepless, honestly. The card player kind of like, I don't know. I like that one for what it is, but I don't know if I would call it a giallo really. But it starts out well, and then it just kind of meanders, and then it just kind of ends. And I don't know. It's really just kind of weird. It's like an odd couple mashup with a blind sex worker and a little Asian kid. And it's just really weird at times. And then, like I said, they just, as you mentioned in your review, because I read your review before I even watched the movie, and you're 100% correct about they act like there's a mystery to who the killer is, but then they only present one person that it could possibly be. And then they're just like, oh yeah, by the way, he's the killer and he has no motive. And then the movie's over. It's still well made. So he still has that in him. But I really think if someone else had written the script for him or helped him write the script, I think it could have been something better. But it's just really kind of down the road. But it is better than Dracula 3D.
Well, yes. There is that. I mean, it's kind of strange, isn't it? Because Dark Glasses was the project he was meant to make directly after Sleepless in 2001, 2002. And the funding fell through because the producer went bankrupt. And so somebody was, I got into not a heated debate, but it was somebody online and sort of saying, you know, they were defending it, and people were saying they hadn't seen anything bad written about the movie, which I found very hard to believe, being a big Argento fan. That I thought it was pretty terrible, if I'm honest. Apart from, as you said at the beginning of the movie, it's beautifully, it's kind of, the first 5 minutes I thought, wow, this really could be something special, because you've got like this kind of classic Argento and this kind of like the solar eclipse, and it's kind of beautifully shot, and I thought, oh, this is really going to go somewhere. But the whole idea, the whole idea of that weird thing of being a mystery, but not a mystery, and subverting the whole idea could be interesting, but it didn't do anything interesting with it. It just seemed after 20 years, they could have at least given the script a polish. It just wasn't. It didn't work for me, and I think it's a shame, because I kind of always holding a candle for Dario Argento, thinking maybe he's got one more good movie in him, and I still hope he does, but I don't think this certainly wasn't it. It's so it just the last half of the movie was just like people stumbling around in the dark countryside, wasn't it? For
about 20-30 minutes just walking around the woods doing nothing.
Exactly.
Like, that's not even a joke. That's all it is.
It's strange, isn't it? I mean, I'm thinking, if you're right, I haven't never written a script for a movie, but I'm thinking if you did write a script for a movie, that would be a very boring 60 pages, wouldn't it? Sort of walking around the woods, stumbling around.
Well, that's the thing, is he probably wrote like a page, but then just like was like into the moment, into the scenery. But that's why you put the finished product together and then you make cuts. But it's like he just decided to just leave everything in there. Like, I don't know if he even watched it or if he just threw it all together and it was like good enough.
So it's strange. I mean, hopefully he does go, but like you say, age is a number, isn't it? If David Cronenberg could be making movies that still push buttons and entertain people, but do different things, then there's no real excuse for anyone else not to do the same thing. But Joseph, did you catch up with it, or have you kind of avoided it?
Argento, I have to be told by some reputable people that, hey, you're missing something special, and no one has done that yet. So yeah, I've no interest, honestly.
Fair enough. Nathan, what about you? Are you is your interest peaked or not particularly?
I wouldn't say it's peaked, but I mean, I probably will watch it at some point. I'm just not in a huge rush.
Yeah. It's also, I mean, it's kind of funny, quite often when you watch Italian movies or, movies that have been dubbed into English, sometimes it adds that kind of weird Euro dubbing strangeness to it. But the only version that's out at the moment, the version I saw was subtitled. So you haven't even got that as an excuse for it being a bit stilted and a bit sort of odd. But I love odd movies. It doesn't work for me. If I said to someone who was talking about the movie and saying they loved it, and I said, if you can find something that you really loved in it, then that's great for you. That's I'm really happy for you if you can. But for me, it just wasn't. It was a big disappointment. So, but any other big disappointments, David, or any home runs?
I mean, if you're just talking about in life in general, we could make this podcast 8 hours. But if you want to just talk about movies, no, because like I said, I've pretty much only been watching Cronenberg movies when I have the time to watch something.
Okay.
So I've been buying a lot of the Criterion collection of his older movies that I just never got around to buying for one reason or another. And then occasionally I'll go on Tubi and try to turn something on and then just turn it off after 20 minutes.
Yeah, well, yes.
I love Tubi, but it's like trying to find a golden nugget in a sewer full of shit. So sometimes it's just not worth it, and you just give up and go do something else.
Well, isn't it funny, like in modern life now, that we have so much choice? And back in the day, when you went to the video store and you spent ages picking out a title or a DVD or a VHS, if you go back that far, and you're thinking, you take it home, you start watching and going, this is a bit shit, but I paid $5 or whatever, £3 or whatever it was to rent it for the night, so I'm going to persevere. But when you can, spend all night flicking through Tubi and Netflix or whatever, there isn't that incentive, is there? Unless a film grabs you, sometimes it kind of, our attention spans, or have the movies got worse? I don't know.
I think that's why during the 80s, like the 70s and 80s, even the worst horror movies there, I could still find something to like.
Yeah.
Because I would go to my dad's on the weekend. He would tell me to go to the video store, pick out 1 or 2 movies, and that's what I'd have to watch for the whole weekend. So even if it turned out to be crap, I would make just the most of it. And I think, like, now that you mentioned it, it's like I could appreciate them a lot more. And now it's like, okay, this movie's boring. Within the first 20 minutes, I have a million other options.
I think it has a lot to do with the thrill of the hunt as well. When you're in the video store, you don't have any information other than what's on the box. With the internet and streaming, you have all the information right there. You can go read a review or anything like that. Being at the video store, you just have what's in your hand and that's it.
But of course, at the video store, you go and you didn't know. I mean, quite often you could be duped into renting a movie you'd already seen under a different title, or a box art that had nothing to do with the film, or images on the back of the video box that weren't in the movie at all. But it's still, like you say, was an event, wasn't it? So, but anyway, thank you, David. We'll see if we're thanking you after your main pick, which we'll be coming up to shortly. But Nathan, how about you? Have you seen anything you'd like to tell us about?
Not really. I rewatched Unfriended, and I still love it as much as I did back when I first watched it. But we already talked about it way back when it first got released. I haven't seen anything new. I want to see that new Black Phone movie, though. And Wes actually said he'd go watch it with me, so That's another plus.
That does look interesting, doesn't it? Although I did see a bit of a sniffy review saying it was a little bit too fantasy-based to kind of land any punches, but you never listen to critics. But yeah, no, it'll be interesting. But if you do get a chance to see it, I don't think it's going to be coming out of Spanish cinemas anytime soon. But I'm interested to hear what you think about it. Anything else? Or we're catching up on our movies of 2002 for the upcoming Patreon top 3. And Nathan, you'll be glad to know that I've watched at least 2 of yours already.
Oh, I hope that you've enjoyed them as much as I do.
Well, that remains to be seen. But thank you, Nathan. Joseph, how about you? Anything you've watched you want to tell us about?
I can't think of a single thing I've watched in a long time. It's just there's nothing out there speaking to me, and I just been watching a lot of old TV reruns or just old action movies. There's no horror movies like calling my name. If anyone has any recommendations, feel free to look me up on Facebook and give them to me, but there's just nothing talking to me.
Talking of films that, because I don't know why I blanked out on this, but when I sent it to you, so I said, it's that really fun, twisty horror thriller, No Exit, and then you said you'd already spoken about that on the show.
Yeah, I reviewed it in one episode, and then Nathan reviewed it in another.
I wonder why I didn't pick up on that anyway, but I enjoyed that. It was fun and twisty and silly, wasn't it? But have you seen that, David?
That doesn't ring a bell. Who's in it, or what is it about?
I don't know if there's anyone. I don't know if there's anyone recognised. Well, no, there's one of the older woman who plays a nurse in it. I recognise her, but it's one kind of character actress. But it's about some people being stranded at a rest stop during a blizzard, and this one woman sees that there's a child being kidnapped in a van. And she realizes whoever's kidnapped the child is in the van is one of the people that she's trapped in the lodge with. So that's the
okay. I do remember you guys mentioning that on an episode, but no, I haven't seen that.
Well, I'm glad you remember it. But
is it on Hulu or Tubi or anything?
Something like that. Yes, I think.
Yeah, it's on Hulu. It's a Hulu original.
Okay.
The only other thing I've watched, I watched Friday the 13th Part 4, Final Chapter, which you may have heard of. It's some nights you just kind of want a bit of comfort horror. He's got something when you just think, I just want to put something on and just watch something I've seen a million times just because it's kind of comforting, which is strange to, movies about a mass murderer killing teenagers. But, we all kind of find our comfort in different places. But that was as fun as I remember it. But the other movie I did say I just want to mention very quickly is on Netflix, which was The Trip, which is the Norwegian movie starring Noomi Rapace. who was in the girl with the dragon tattoo. I think, was she in the original? Was she in the David Fincher ones? No, she was in the original, wasn't she? But this is kind of like a horror black comedy about a couple on the verge of breaking up, and they go on holiday for a weekend to a remote cabin, but they've already decided each one is going to kill the other, although the other doesn't know about it. So they're both planning to kill their respective, their other half, as it were. But then a trio of psychotic bank robbers or escaped convicts turn up, and various mayhem and incidents with lawnmowers ensue. So it's kind of a very over-the-top, almost cartoonish kind of horror thriller, which kind of spam in the cabin type horror thriller. But I had quite a lot of fun with it. So if you're kind of if you're in the mood for some kind of foreign splatter, then you could do worse than The Trip. So anyone seen that or heard of it?
No, I've not seen it or heard of it.
Well, I was going to say, maybe Joseph, you might want to check it out if you're looking for a recommendation.
No, it sounds good. Yeah. What year was that? This year?
Last year, I think. So it's very recent.
I'll look into that. Sounds good.
It's not amazing.
I'll look into that, though. It does sound like the plot that's going to happen when you guys finally meet up to do a live podcast.
You're saying that we're going to be planning to kill each other.
I didn't say anything. I don't know what you're talking. I said you're going to take a trip to see each other.
I see. Right. Okay. So I'm going to play the trailer for you. And when we come back, David will give you a synopsis and tell you why he picked this movie for us. So here's the trailer for Babysitter Massacre.
In our costumes and laughing and getting candy, and then she was gone.
Guy with the white face.
His entire head is white.
Tis the season.
Years ago, on Halloween night, a group of childhood friends watched in horror as a member of their babysitters club was abducted by a masked stranger. Now haunted by their tragic past, the young women plan a bittersweet reunion before heading off to college. But on that night, a sinister guest brings chaos and fear as one by one the women are stalked, mutilated, and murdered. Is the killer a specter from the past, or is there a new babysitter club killer? All right. I will preface this review with an admission. I have met and hung out with a lot of the people associated with Babysitter Massacre, and I dare call them friends, though they probably all hate me and I don't blame them, so I can see how I might be biased with this review. But if anyone knows me or watches my show, they know that I treat my friends worse than anyone because I'm such a great guy. But truthfully, I saw this movie for the first time before any of that, and if anything, Babysitter Massacre is the reason why the wife and I know these lovely, sexy people. But enough babble and on to the review. Babysitter Massacre is as good as it gets with slasher movies of that era. We get the 3 Bs, boobs, butts, and gore. But unfortunately, torture porn was still, quote-unquote, popular around the time that the director was shopping this movie around. So in order to get your movie picked up and noticed, that's kind of what you had to do. So most of my gripes with the movie center around that. As soon as a chase scene should begin, the killer knocks the person out and the pacing comes to a dead halt, and then we get a few minutes of torture, which I really don't care for in my movies at all. The effects aren't terrible considering the budget, but with how they're used, I really couldn't care less. I know I'm sounding kind of negative, but you know me, I like to get the negative out of the way and then leave with the positive. I'm not saying this is the best movie ever made. It's obviously not bloody murder, but as far as the plot, there's some mild confusion here and there with it wanting to be a Halloween-themed slasher, but also have the Babysitter Club theme. And I think John Carpenter made that decision already. And of course, Halloween will always be Halloween. It would have never worked as Babysitter Murders. So this movie is definitely a babysitter theme. It just happens to take place on Halloween. But there are sequels that we'll get into that aren't going to be around Halloween. So definitely look at the name. It's Babysitter Massacre, and that's 100% what you should think of with the movie. My final gripe is the killer's motive is kind of muddled and unclear at the end. We can talk about that later. Obviously, there's going to be spoilers. All in all, Babysitter Massacre is a loving throwback to Sorority House Massacre 2, Hard to Die, and all those late 80s, early 90s movies that are full of nudity, cheesy dialogue, and are just dumb fun. It's just too bad the tone is all over the place because the torture scenes and the long, depressive conversation scenes really bog everything down. But every time I start to have a complaint, I get a pair of boobs in my face and the movie is saved. The cast are really likable and bring a lot to what are basically cannon fodder on paper. So they also look great naked, so I appreciated it more even after breaking my wrist while watching the movie. Aaron R. Ryan as Angela and Joni Durian as Lucky are instantly likable. Tara Clark is great as the bitch character Arlene, though there's a swerve with a hammer somewhere where I definitely think the deaths should have been switched. I don't know. I can't talk. Switched. How about that? Truthfully, I hated Mary Lee Osborne as Bianca my first watch because she is so harsh and unlikable. But then my second and subsequent viewings, I understood that this was a front to conceal her hurt in herself. And that's some deep shit in a movie about Halloween candy and rubbing it on your tits. And can we talk about how good this movie looks for having only a budget of a few $1,000s? I've seen other indie slashers with more experience and funding behind them that are pitch black and you can't see shit. And say what you want about Henrik Kuto's movies, writing, story, acting, whatever, you have to admit that he can make the lowest budget movie look like $1 million. I could dissect every scene and go on forever, and I'll have a lot more for trivia, but I'm really interested in your guys' thoughts because I don't think any of you have even heard of this movie before, let alone seen it, so I'm definitely interested. And let's start with Nathan because you're so goddamn cute.
Oh, well, thank you. I like to think so as well. Okay, so like you said, I'd never seen or heard of this movie, and I like to give allowances for movies that have very low budgets. I mean, Joseph and I made a movie for just, pennies, and so I know how difficult it is, and, you put a lot of work into it. So that's why I can't be too harsh, on any film. It just doesn't feel right to me to be harsh, but so I will say with this, I think that the director and writer-director actually did a good job with a lot of the characterizations. I thought that, the characters seemed a little fleshed out, maybe better fleshed out than in, some other movies. I liked the character of Lucky. I didn't necessarily like what happened to her because I don't know. It was just the whole hammer scene in the basement was just very odd to me because it was just like I don't know. They barely gave any thought to maybe some other way of getting out of there aside from beating their friend to death with a hammer. I mean, I just don't think I would have done it, even if she's telling me to do it. I mean, no, I'm not going to be doing that. I'll hold the hammer and wait till the killer comes back down here and swing it at his head. But
there is something because Henrik does commentary for all his movies, and he definitely mentions that it didn't come across in the movie, but they were down there for, I think, like a day, maybe 2, possibly longer. So it does come across like, oh, it's been 5 minutes. I need, a sandwich, so I better kill my friend and get out of here. But it did come off that way, but they were definitely supposed to be down there for a lot longer, I think.
And like you, the character Bianca, I thought that she was very unlikable through the whole movie. And I do understand, we talked about it in Halloween 2 with the character of Laurie in that movie that, she's going through trauma and everything. But it doesn't make for entertainment watching it for me personally. So when she spends all her time being mean and cruel, even to somebody that's trying to help her, it just, I don't know. It just leaves me like, kind of like in that zone. But I mean, at the end, she kind of broke down, and I did feel kind of bad for her then. But for most of the movie, she's just very, very like harsh, unnecessarily so, I guess. And for me, I did guess the killer correctly, and I'm usually terrible at that. Stripe says hello.
Hello, Stripes.
But I did guess the killer correctly, so I did have that going for me. I kind of understood the motive and I guess what was happening there. I will say that there's a certain character that died that I didn't think was going to die, so I mean it was good to have that kind of surprise in there as well.
It really sounds like Nathan is struggling over there with his animals.
But he's keeping his composure.
Calm.
He's very
down
professional.
for like 5 minutes. Just let me talk, and then I'll mute myself. Then y'all can like do whatever. Okay, so yeah, and in general, I thought the movie had some good points going for it. I mean, it's probably not a very rewatchable one for me because, like you said, a lot of it just seems to be like kidnap girl, tie her to a chair, and kill her, and that just doesn't do anything for me. I swear, she just jumped over a pile of DVDs and landed right in front of me. Stripes.
Honestly, when I listen to the podcast, these are my favorite episodes when the animals just go wild in the background. So this is great. If one of them ends up flushing a toilet, I can die a happy man. So please.
Well, it sounds
I'll try to train them too.
Sounds like she might be in at any moment if you're training her to fly through the air.
Well, I mean, she's learning that on her own. Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. So Babysitter Massacre. Yeah. I mean, for what it is, not bad. I mean, it's probably not my kind of movie in general, but I mean, I don't regret watching it. So there's that.
That's one for the Blu-ray release.
I've seen worse quotes on movies, so sure. But speaking of really harsh, unlikable people that are terrible to their friends that just want to love them, Joseph, what did you think of this movie?
Go back to your room.
I'm actually in my room right now.
Oh, good. Stay there. Yeah, I'm the wrong person to review something like Babysitter Massacre. I've lamented my snobbery many times before, and that these indie films, they try as they might, they just don't capture my attention, and I'm not sure why. I mean, what you have here essentially is a Kickstarter version of something like Sorority House Massacre or one of its sequels, and that in and of itself should be pretty good, and certainly this one ticks all those requisites like ample nudity, the gore, and a mystery psycho you'll finger immediately. But I don't know. I mean, these low budget indies lack any real oomph. The cinematography is typically of the kind of camera A, camera B variety. And more often than not, it's the central focus is on like two characters sitting on a couch, talking. And boy, do the characters in this film talk. I mean, I kept waiting for someone to get up off the couch and get involved in a chase scene or something. And I think a lot of the times when indie filmmakers, when they're stymied with a lack of budget, they decline to take any real risks or, for whatever reason. It's like they second guess themselves, or they're afraid of breaking continuity, or, even worse, they're afraid of breaking a piece of equipment. And believe me, I know those feelings firsthand, having made a real, disease pit of an indie myself. But I think in these types of film, it typically shows with a lack of any forward momentum, visual or otherwise. I mean, to its credit, I think Babysitter Massacre at least tries to kind of outlive its flamboyant title by having characters with actual emotional problems or traumas that are a little more realistically defined than your typical slasher movie. And a couple of the actors also show some real promise. And for me personally, I actually liked the girl playing Bianca. I mean, she was kind of like a tough, no nonsense girl without being deliberately hateful. I thought she was bruised essentially. So she kind of had a right to be, standoffish. And despite some overly kind of didactic dialogue in spots, I thought the writing was kind of concise, and the film more or less stays focused on telling an actual story. I also like looking back at 2013 and how dated the fashions and lingo are already. I mean, this is less than a decade later. And again, I'm looking at Bianca and thinking, wow, what a nightmare she must be for airport security. But I think ultimately there's just, I don't know, there's just no pep in this film's step for me. I mean, I always commend the effort behind these types of movies, but a lot of times they show promise beyond their budget, but for the most part, something like Babysitter Massacre just doesn't really rattle my cage. I didn't find it suspenseful when it needed to be, and the characters just weren't, I don't know, they just weren't all that interesting, if I'm honest. I certainly didn't hate the movie because it's definitely a likable movie. And, it at least it tries to get you involved with the characters, but I don't know. It's just, all I can really say is it's just not for me, I'm afraid.
Even though I do love it, and like I said, I'm slightly biased, but I watched this and I agree with a lot of what you said. And it's kind of like if you watch his other movies, he uses the same people a lot. And it's kind of like in a lot of horror movies, people that like to reuse the same actors and stuff. You come to like when you go back and then watch it again after watching all those other movies, you can like kind of appreciate it more because you get to know these people and stuff. And it's kind of like, yeah, so it's like, it's definitely if you watch it like just by itself, but if you kind of get into the legacy of like his other movies and stuff.
A lot of times they use the same people because they can't afford anyone else. And these people will work for peanuts. I know that firsthand as well.
Well, in Dayton, Ohio, there is this like small horror making community, and a lot of them like help each other make their own films and stuff. So it's definitely, I mean, yeah, they will work for very little and stuff, but having to deal with all new actors and actresses, you already know kind of what to expect.
Yeah. I will top this off and say that, the movie is actually put together fairly well despite its constraints. But I don't know. It's just a chase scene or two would have really pepped this thing up, I think.
That's why I said the torture porn parts just really bogged down like any chances this has of being like what it should have been. And like I said, that's just the time period. If you're a desperate indie filmmaker, you want your movie to get picked up, you kind of have to go to what they're looking for. I hate to say it, but that's just how it works. Anyway, thank you, Joseph. I really wish I could go to Erik in many different ways, but oh well. Justin, I'm really interested in what you have to say about Babysitter Massacre.
Well, it surprised me in a number of ways. I mean, I think, like you said, I didn't know how much the budget was, but obviously I knew it was a very low budget movie, and it looked pretty good for that kind of budget. I thought it was shot pretty nicely, and also the thing that I really liked about it. I mean, one of the things we talked about endlessly on this, especially with like new slashers, even going back as far as, well, I'd say a typical one was the Friday 13th remake. It was at 2009, or the most recent one is kind of semi-remake, and filling it with unlikable characters. And that's kind of been the bane of many modern slasher movies, is that when people say that they love slash movies, classic slasher movies, that for me, I think of, Friday 13th, My Bloody Valentine's, House on Sorority Row, where you have that kind of the bitchy character, but they kind of tend to be a one-off. There tends to be something that's kind of missing, I think, for many of those movies is a kind of camaraderie between the characters, where they actually are likable and they kind of come together and help each other. Even if they don't help each other, they're not constantly each other's throats being bitchy and just kind of mindless jocks. And you had that in those older slasher movies, but it wasn't the focus of it. So what I found kind of quite refreshing about Babysitter Massacre was actually the characters. Even Bianca, I kind of thought was kind of in some kinds relatable, but the characters, for a lot of it, were kind of fairly well rounded. And it probably is down to what you said, David, about how they kind of know each other and they're probably friends outside or colleagues and work together on lots of different films. There felt like there's a camaraderie with the characters, and I appreciated that. I didn't find, I found that there was a kind of a sort of genuine humanity to them, and they felt kind of relatable and sort of likable, even the ones that like Bianca, who was clearly had this kind of chip on her shoulder and working through all these issues. And then she had some great lines like, "Did someone order a cunt?" With the pizza guy turning up, things like that. There was just kind of, they went a little bit above and beyond what some of the kind of indie slashers that I've seen, even some of the ones, I would say, some of the ones I've seen online, they on YouTube, where you see all these ones where people are making fan films based on the Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street or the Halloween series. And quite often some of them have got relatively good budget, but sometimes even that was missing with those, even those elevated budgets. So I appreciated that. I think what you guys have already said is kind of where my problems would come in, is that I think if it was a love letter to slasher movies, the classic slasher movies, a chase scene or two would not have gone amiss, I think. There was a little bit too much for me of the kind of the killer turning up to what seemingly was a random house and killing everyone in it, or kind of just finding the girl, then tying her to a chair. And I think possibly because I was watching it on YouTube, I'm right in thinking that there was no nudity and very little gore in it. So it just feel like a little bit get a girl with big breasts tied to a chair.
I'll stop you there. There is a copy on YouTube, and they cut everything out.
Right.
All of the nudity, all of the gore, they butchered the living hell out of it. I've seen that copy, and that takes all the good stuff away from. Did you all watch the YouTube version?
I watched that version, I'm sorry to say, and I actually
That's not the full movie.
Okay.
Someone butchered that movie and uploaded it.
Yeah, when we get to background, I'll actually have a question about that, but we'll let Justin continue anyway.
Every 5 seconds, there is full frontal female nudity in this movie.
Okay.
And the gore, like I said, isn't like amazing or anything, but there is plenty of it too. I can understand everything you have against the movie now that you mentioned that.
Well, it just seems, because at the time, the version I saw is literally find a young woman with large breasts tied to a chair and flick some ketchup at her head, and that's the kind of version that I saw, which obviously, is, I didn't realise that we weren't seeing the full version, but it's interesting to hear that. I mean, obviously that has some extra spice to the movie, but I think it doesn't. Although that adds stuff to it from an exploitation angle, a classic exploitation angle, obviously. Again, it comes back down to a good film, a film that you could still have a good film that has none of those things in it but it doesn't. Unfortunately, it's not an exercise in suspense. There were plenty of there was a scene where Bianca sees the killer in this kind of street with all these Halloween party goers, and she follows him, or she kind of watches, and that in itself could have turned into a kind of suspenseful scene when he turned the tables and went after her or something, in that kind of classic slasher movie thing. And having the final girl, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what because if we're going to spoil the movie, it turns out, am I right in thinking it turns out that the killer is the father of the girl who died, the original babysitter, who was babysitting the final girl in the beginning, but he killed his own daughter.
Yeah, that's why I said it's kind of confusing and kind of muddled near the end. But basically, Mr. Walker is in love with Angela and wants to kill everyone in her life so that all she will have is him, so that they can like run away together. Which I mean, I've heard worse motives for a killer in a slasher movie. I don't know if they're going for just kind of a crazy. It definitely comes off as a crazy like Russ Thorne. It takes a lot of love to do something like this kind of like thinking. So it can be a little fuddled, but I'm pretty sure that's what his motive actually was.
So it's even more icky because presumably he was had planned this when she was like a 9-year-old girl by killing his own daughter.
Well, they said when his daughter was killed, they were 14. But you can assume they've been friends their whole life. So yeah, it's like, was he grooming her this whole time? So it definitely adds that that's extra kind of layer of yuck.
That confused me because I presumed that the little girl at the beginning, who the woman who was babysitting with the tiny little iPhone to show it was presumably 2003 or whatever. When did the first iPhone come out? I can't remember. But the little girl, I thought the little girl was grown up, and then she was Angela, but that's not the case.
I don't think so. I think it was just to kill a babysitter at the beginning, just to justify the name, even though there's no babysitting the rest of the movie, as you guys have mentioned. So.
Got you.
Well, if he loved Angela so much, why did he slice her Achilles?
Love makes you do strange things, Nathan. Okay, stop being so damn judgy.
I'm not trying not to be judgy, but I just don't remember the last time I tried to slice Wes open with a knife, a scalpel.
Some people just don't understand, and you have to make them understand. How do you think I got my wife? Also named Angela, by the way.
Coincidence.
I thought you might have emptied your bank account.
What bank account?
Exactly.
I did appreciate the killer's not. He didn't exactly have a mask, but it was certainly brought to mind. He kind of reminded me of the kind of mask in something like Torso or.
I kept thinking it looked like somebody put a pair of tidy whities on their head the whole movie.
Well, that would have been, that it was a simple mask, but I kind of guess it was kind of almost referencing the shape, wasn't it? Because in Halloween, the Michael Myers, because having that kind of, I know he had the William Shatner mask, but it was that's kind of, in some shots, it kind of just looks like this big white, featureless face. So
they even call him. I think they ask, "What is your costume? What are you, a tampon or something like that?" In the movie.
That's right. She says, "Are you a killer or a tampon?"
And it should belong in trivia, but I have a lot for trivia. But that's actually a sensory deprivation mask. So when the actors wore that, they actually couldn't see. I don't know if they could even hear with it on. That's why there's not that many chase scenes or anything, because he'd just fall right over because he couldn't see anything. If I was less charitable, I would say that it could have made the movie more enjoyable if I was wearing that mask. But I protest too much. I think there was kind of I have seen a lot worse, and bless her, that is usually starring Felicia Rose in modern those modern movies. They just seem to churn them out, and it's and I find it a bit like you're saying about the films on Tubi, where you watch them and just it's the blandness dressed up as with slash movie trappings, whereas that this. It's not, hand on heart, it's not a great movie. It's not a movie I'm going to come back to very often, if ever at all. But I did appreciate there was some interesting stuff in it, and I really I enjoyed the camaraderie of the cast, and I thought it was well shot, and it's a shame that perhaps if the director was able to bypass that torture porn thing and make a real love letter to a slasher movie, classic slasher movies, and had a bit more of those tropes. And again, it's not so much that just want the same old slasher movie over and over again, because God knows there has been some love letters to slasher movies that feature all the tropes that still don't do them very well. Some of them do them better than others, but I think it just would have it would have made it a more enjoyable experience for me. And hopefully, given the director is clearly very, very prolific, then maybe he does have a true slasher movie a tribute in him at some point. And you're talking about, because I looked at you saying about sequels, because I saw there was one called Babysitter Massacre Heavy Metal, which doesn't look related. Yeah, I'll get into all of that in the trivia. That's a big long one.
Well, we always like a big long one, don't we, Nathan?
Well, Justin, what is that supposed to mean?
Well, a long bit of trivia.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that's what you meant. I just thought of something else, okay? The killer in this movie is also a liar because, he says if they kill Lucky, they can go free. And what does he do? He goes right back down there and strangles Arlene to death. He totally lied.
The other thing I was going to mention, you said about the strange scene where they decide to beat one girl to death with a hammer in the basement because they've been there for days. But that doesn't really wash because Bianca and the pizza guy were driving around all night. And so unless they were driving around for 72 hours, it seems like it all happened on the same night.
I hope not, for that guy's sake.
Yeah,
the GPS can get you really lost sometimes.
That's true.
You never know.
That is true. Well, should we get on to some...
This is why I picked this movie, because I know it has flaws. You guys don't cover newer movies usually. And so I figured it would, instead of just, typically picking a bad movie, and then I know what you guys are going to say. So I knew this would bring up some good conversation and everything. So I can understand everything you guys have said, and I definitely recommend trying to find the full version, give it one more shot. Because honestly, if you watch like Hard to Die or something and take out all the nudity and that kind of stuff, of course, it's not going to be that good because sometimes it's, that's what makes the movie. I mean, I know growing up, I'd rent a movie and it'd be dog shit, but hey, if it had at least one good shower scene in it, then I'm instantly going to remember it. And this has, wonton, wall-to-wall boobage.
Well, see, that's my problem is I don't really care if a film has nudity or gore. I don't know. I need like momentum of some kind.
I think you're kind of right. I mean, back in the 80s when they used to rent movies that in the UK after the video nasties, Hysteria, and quite often you would rent a movie and it's just been completely shorn of all violence and any nudity. And sometimes, though it doesn't make or break a movie, but it certainly helps it. And it certainly peps up a bad movie.
Yeah, we mentioned that when we talked about Anthropophagus, how the American cut, like it's useless. Like if you watch that, they shear everything out of that would make that movie interesting. So it's like pointless.
Yeah, no, I think I agree, David. You said it. I mean, it has provided I wasn't sure what we were going to, how it was going to go talking about this kind of newer movie, and like you say, it's not really in our wheelhouse. For these kind of indie, to cover an indie movie is the main pick. So yeah, no, I think it's and of course it's even better because Erik's not here, so that obviously helps the conversation flow. Without him interrupting.
Wait till he hears you say that.
But he's already sending me because I said that I said on the messenger group that I was going to do a little shtick about Erik, and he's already sent a gif of his face on Naked Werewolf Woman or one of those, and Daniela and Alice throwing string at Mrs. Voorhees. So Erik's already having a kind of a mini kind of episode from the Turkish prison as well. At least they got Wi-Fi, so it's not all lost. But let's go on to some backgrounds. So I must admit I didn't dig up a massive amount apart from I looked on newspapers.com and the directors had quite a few interviews and bits and pieces with the local higher press. So. But as a resident, I presume are you a resident in Ohio?
I actually recently, the wife and I moved. We're in a town about 20 minutes away.
Okay.
Because Dayton's a big city. We don't want to live in the city. So we did move down here to be closer kind of to the whole area and stuff.
Well, is it because y'all are dating and you wanted to be near Dayton?
Oh. Anyway, but let's get on to some backgrounds.
Well, before you get into your background, Dave, I had a question for you since I saw the butchered version of this film. There's a very funny quote on the Internet Movie Database. It says, in the trivia, it says, when the man makes a still completely naked Linda fellatio him, the camera zooms in when he starts groping her DD breasts. It seems this is done for the sexual excitement of the viewer rather than atmospheric horror. This is especially obvious when he ejaculates all over Linda's face and breasts. Is that in the film? Did I miss this? What is this?
That is not in the movie. That's what I love about IMDb is pretty much anyone can add anything they want.
Yeah, I figured that's what this was.
No one has changed that, and I hope they never do because it's amazing. No, there's wall-to-wall nudity, but there is no rape. There's no like icky sexual stuff or anything like that. So no, I don't know what that is, but Jesus Christ, every time I see it.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, there's no like hidden Italian porno version where they insert porn clips or anything. Not yet, anyway.
Because I was looking at the cast list and I didn't see anyone named Linda, character name or real name, so who knows?
Yeah, no fellatio, at least not on camera.
If I'm honest, when I was reading that, I was like, this sounds like something you would do to him. Like, you would put that on his IMDb page just to be messing with him.
The man. It's my favorite part.
Yeah.
Jesus. Anyway, should I go ahead with my background and stuff?
Yes.
Okay. The killer, Mr. Walker, is played by Jeff Berkman. He's probably the most famous out of all of them. He was actually if you look on IMDb, he's credited as playing at least 2, possibly more of the zombies in the original Day of the Dead. Kind of like blink and you'll miss them roles, but I just always thought that was pretty cool that they managed to get him, and he's in a lot of Henrik's movies. So that gives them a little bit more credibility to have that kind of like, actor working with them and stuff. The killer was also played by multiple different people just to keep you guessing to their identity, though I don't think it was very hard to do. I mean, if Nathan could pick them out, how hard was it really?
Well, this is true. I'm not actually good at picking out the killers. I'm never good at it. But I barely knew who the killer was in The Night Before Easter.
That's a whole tangent I won't go on. But this technique of having the killer being played by multiple people to keep you guessing was also used in the 2000 Oscar award-winning art film Bloody Murder. As you had mentioned before, there are 3 sequels planned. They were all funded by Kickstarter, and then COVID happened. Originally, it was going to be not Bloody Murder, sorry. Babysitter Massacre 2 Sleigh Bells, set during Christmas. 3 was called Overnight, was going to be like a camp theme. And then God damn it. I have it abbreviated BM, so I just keep thinking Bloody Murder, possibly Bowel Movement, same thing. Anyway, Babysitter Massacre Heavy Metal was going to be a spinoff directed by Dan Wilder, who's written for Henrik's projects in the past. And that one actually got the furthest made before COVID hit. So I think they're going to go ahead and release that as Babysitter Massacre 2 instead, and then do the other one. So they're rearranging the order. But Heavy Metal is going to be it's going to be more like a Slumber Party Massacre 2 type thing. So I don't know how much it's really the Babysitter Massacre is like becoming like a whole franchise. So they're not all going to be, direct sequels and have the same characters, obviously, because everybody dies for the most part. Also, name of a terrible show no one should watch. They also have a book series that are definitely like Fear Street and a lot of those young adult novels, but with a lot more sex and gore that are available on Amazon. Also on Amazon are 2 westerns and a love letter to the Jali entitled 13 Black Gloves for the Murderer's Path on Damaged Blood Vessels, written by some illiterate fat fuck, which is dedicated to the Body Count Continues and Hysteria Lives, for helping me learn all that I know about the subgenre. And if anybody were to buy that, that'd be great. I figured you guys wouldn't mind a plug in this show. I hear you guys like plugs.
Well, we usually wait to the end of the show.
Just mark this out to edit that part out. So.
Cut that. And just basically I wrote down a lot of stuff that I already mentioned before about how a lot of them have worked with each other in their own separate films and projects. And really that's what indie horror is all about, a group of friends all supporting each other, branching out on their own. Unlike another horror community that I know that just brings everyone down and argues over which outdated pop star has been less awful.
Is that the Cher versus Whitney Houston community?
Yeah, that's it. To be fair, I had heard of Susie and the Banshees, never really listened to them a lot. But the other one I had never heard of until I started listening to your guys' show, if that tells you anything.
And did you listen to any subsequently?
It's not my thing, but it's not terrible.
Well, it's not your
Susie
thing.
and the Banshees. Anyway. The other I didn't bother.
No. Well, it's fair. I mean, Erik's not here, so it's not fair because he's, not to talk, ill of his, of the, that thing that he likes. But,
you are.
So is that all your backgrounds?
Yeah, there's some more on IMDb, but I figured one of you guys probably pulled that off of there. Since Joseph had already mentioned the one that's on there. So, yep, that's all I got.
Well, Nathan, have you pulled it off? The background, I mean.
Uh-huh. No. It's just the way you said that. It came out like you were, trying to talk rude.
Nathan, you've known me for long enough to know that's never my intention.
So you never mean to talk rude? Even to Erik?
Never. No, I'm too classy for that.
Of course. Okay. But as far as background, no.
No, okay. Well, Joseph, what have you got for us?
Well, the only other thing I read was the apparently it was the last like indie film to grace the shelves at Blockbuster before they kind of went kaput. So that's kind of interesting if true, but I don't really have anything else to add, I'm afraid.
Okay. Well, I don't. I mean, I had a look through the newspaper archives and interviews, and I did see that Henrik has got he does a podcast, isn't he? A horror story podcast. And it looks quite interesting, so I might have to check some of those out. I can't remember. I meant to write down what it was, but you'll find it if you do a search for his. And he's done lots of other films, hasn't he? He's done an anthology horror film. Anthology.
Yeah, there's one called Scare Waves that is actually probably my favorite horror movie that he's done.
Okay. Well, I was always a sucker for anthology, so I might give that a go. But and apologies, I had no idea that I mean, is YouTube? I don't know, because I'm sure I've seen like sort of quite gory stuff for like some of those fan films, the Friday the 13th fan films and stuff like that.
As I've found out with my show on YouTube, it just seems luck of the draw,
right?
If you get flagged for that kind of stuff or not. So I think they just went ahead and cut all that out just so it wouldn't get flagged, and also so it wouldn't get flagged that it's illegally uploaded.
But is it? Yeah, because I presume it had ads running all the way through it, so hopefully the filmmakers are getting some revenue from it.
Let's hope so.
So, okay, right. Well. Thank you, David. I think. Well, let's find out. What is this a kind of a award-winning number of people who've made their thoughts known, Joseph?
Well, it's just 10 comments, and of the 2 that weren't someone who worked on the movie, Daniel says, "Hello, chaps. Everything puka? I don't know what that means." And then he says, "Jolly good. Whenever I watch a film such as The Babysitter Massacre, I'm reminded of being a parent watching a nativity play. The point is not the entertainment value, but to applaud the effort and to witness one's own dear Sproglet stumble through his one line of dialogue before he breaks character to wave enthusiastically in your general direction. You did great, it was fantastic, and so on. 2 thumbs up." And Jenny Hall Cameron says it was better than Rob Zombie's Halloween.
I'm thinking is the words pucker. I think is it Pucka?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's kind of an English. Well, I don't know if I think it's kind of an Anglo-Indian word for pucker. It's kind of just means really good. So It's kind of a type of pucker. You get pucker. I think it's kind of like an Indian street food or sort of like a brand of food, but it's kind of known as something that pucker just means it's really good. So anyway, that's. I'll teach you some more English slang at some point, but obviously I'm a bit too classy for that, Nathan. So I have to do it off air.
You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Listen on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and about a billion other podcatchers, both good and bad. And consider supporting us on Patreon for extra special content. And of course, you can drop us a line at thehysteriacontinues@gmail.com. Over to you, Justin.
Excellent. Well, we know what's coming next, don't we?
It's my joke of the week. It's so great and fantastic.
The director of Babysitter Massacre was in a automobile accident. Apparently Henrik.
Oh God! Yeah,
match Eric's energy. So yeah.
I was actually going to
upstage him.
I was actually going to ask, is his name Henrik? Because I was calling him Enrique.
It's Henrik.
Okay.
Yeah. When I first met him, I just straight up had to be like, "How do you pronounce your name?" Because I thought it was Henrik or Henrique, like something, just fancy. But no, it's just Henrik.
Yeah. Well, your joke sucked.
Well, we wouldn't have wanted anything different.
That's very hurtful.
Yeah. Well, if you are listening and you can vote, we'll do a poll, or maybe we won't. Who told the joke better, Erik or David? So. But okay, well, I've got. Anyone else got any feedback? Because I know you sent me one, Joseph.
No, that's it.
Okay, well, I'll read this quickly. It's greetings, gents. Wanted to start off by thanking you again for letting me appear on the show. It was a dream come true and so much fun, which I'm sure David will echo those sentiments. Just listen to your Anthropophagus episode. I saw the film years ago when I was first getting into Italian horror movies and loved it. Upon rewatch, the pacing is really is sluggish, but I like the characters, the cheesy dialogue, and the thought the last half was a blast. I also rewatched the original 7 Nightmare on Elm Street films. I loved the first 3 and thought New Nightmare was decent, but 4, 5, and 6 left a lot to be desired. 4 was well made with great effects, but was basically just a retread of Part 3. Part 5 and 6 are decent stories, but were poorly made. I've only seen the remake once when it was in theatres, but don't remember much about it. Based on the overwhelmingly negative reviews, my expectations are very low. Before we finish that off, I mean, what are your views, David, on the Nightmare on Elm Street movies? Would you agree with that summary?
It's really difficult for me when it comes to those and Friday the 13th because I grew up watching those so young that I can't remember which one I watched first or even my earliest memories of them. It was just such like a norm. But I definitely have a fondness for Part 5 that most people don't have because I owned the first 3 or 4, and 5 was my most rented because we didn't own a copy. And even to a point where before we had 2 VCRs and I was old enough to know how to, illegal copy, VHS tapes, I actually recorded the entire movie on a cassette tape. And I would just sit there and like listen to the audio from Part 5, Dream Child, just to go to bed at night. And I did that for the longest time. So it's like I definitely have a fondness for Part 5. Even Freddy's Dead, because when you watch them when you're younger, the cartoony and stupid parts you can appreciate more. So it's harder for me to hate on them, on any of them, really. If I had to pick one, it's for some reason Part 4, which is my wife's favorite. I don't care. I think that's the one where the lady turns into a cockroach, if I believe, with the big hair. Have you guys ever mentioned that?
I don't believe we have. No, that sounds like something we should talk about more often.
Alan Dale. Anyway, so yeah, if I had to pick one, it'd be Part 4 that I don't care for that much. I think the ending's kind of stupid. Freddy's resurrected by dog piss, which I'll just never be able to get over. But otherwise, yeah, I love the Elm Streets. I love them all. And I really wish they would make more because Robert Englund's getting up there. And I know they say age is just a number, like I said earlier. But that's different when you're directing a movie and then when you're under heavy prosthetics and having to act under it.
I'll just quickly finish this off. It says, that's all for now. Take care and looking forward to checking out Night Screams, a film I've never seen before. And, of course, just tipping a hat to what we're covering next time. And it's Rob Balducci, who you would have heard on. What show was he on? A couple of ones ago, wasn't it? Can't remember now.
Sweet 16.
Yes. And he said, P.S. I recently listened to your Iced episode, and Eric's icy dead people joke may be his best ever. So there'll be more jokes from Erik. Well, when I say jokes, Erik will attempt some more jokes in the future episode, and he will be joining us for Night Screams along with Amanda Reyes. We're hoping she'll be joining us for that episode as well. And she's actually written, she's very kindly she's given me an essay she's written on the making and the themes around Night Screams, which I'll be publishing to Hysteria Lives relatively soon. And in fact, it may already be up by the time you hear this, so do check that as a companion piece to her appearing on the show, which is always wonderful to have her on, and as you as well, David, for joining us. And you told us, because obviously you've got Everything Dies is your YouTube channel, is that correct?
Everybody dies, yeah.
Everybody dies. And also
2 or 3 people that watch it.
Well, we all know. I mean, my YouTube channel, I haven't added to it for ages, but it kind of, I if I'm lucky, I've got single figures a month, so I feel your pain. But also your books. Do you want to tell us a bit more about your books? You published one recently, didn't you? You did the Western one, didn't you?
Yeah, I did 2 horror Westerns. I don't know. It actually got me back into writing because I used to write a lot, and I released a book of poetry right out of high school in 2005. It didn't sell, so I got immediate writer's block for 15 years, and then I just finally got the urge to start writing again. And one of my friends, Mr. Palmer, a former member of the Body Count Continues message board, actually loves Westerns, and he writes a lot of them. And reading his books just kind of sparked something in me. And I've always had this thing where I I love horror. I love talking about it, but I'm not good at writing it. So I think writing Westerns with horror elements kind of like helped that, because then I decided to write like a love letter to the Giallo, and I didn't release it in paperback. It's only digital because it was only like 70 some pages, but I didn't want to fill it just full of extra stuff just to make it a longer book. I wanted to tell the story I wanted to tell, and it's got a lot of, you can read it if you don't even know what a Giallo is. I have a small like page or two at the beginning that kind of explains what it is basically. But if you do love Gialli, you can read it and you'll pick up on a lot of like inside jokes and stuff. And there's definitely humor in it. But yeah, I don't want to say too much about it, but I did base some of the characters on people that I know because it helps me flesh out characters better when I do that. And yeah, if anyone wants to read it, that's called 13 Black Gloves. Just look it up on Amazon. And if you give it a shot, I appreciate it. I have more projects I'm trying to work on. It's just when I have time to write.
Well, thank you. Yes, so do check those out. And I mean, are you planning to come back with Bloody Murder 2 at some point?
That's the thing is, honestly, we did the Bloody Murder episode, and it's kind of just the same movie again. So it was originally going to be my pick. But like I said, I wanted to pick a movie that I knew would spark some good conversation. And I definitely think that I did that this episode. So yeah, I'll probably do another listener pick sometime, but maybe I'll pick something super amazing next time.
Well, we're going to have to see, make sure Erik will be around for that. So, but no, thank you, David. It's been, as ever, been a pleasure to have your wit and your, your verve on the show. So thank you for coming on. So
thank you for having me.
No, pleasure. Well, I guess we've already said what we're covering next time. Whose choice was it? Night Screams.
It was mine.
It was yours. So why did you choose Night Screams, Nathan?
Because it's got a huge body count, and I've always found it to be a lot of fun. And it has the sweetheart dancers.
And it's a great way to learn how to play chopsticks on the piano.
And it's a great trailer for Graduation Day.
As I say, it's the best way to watch Graduation Day.
So, yes, well, join us next time on Hysteria Continues, when we will be discussing all things Night Screams. And I said joined by the wonderful Amanda Reyes. David, what pleasures have you chosen for us to play out with this time?
This is some incidental music that my friend Ray Mattis, who has done a lot of music for Henrik's projects, and for some reason he insists on helping me out with mine. I don't know why his skills are such a higher caliber than the projects that I create, but I love him nonetheless, so I wanted to give him some exposure on your show. So this is just some music that he made basically to help promote my my Giallo book.
Okay, excellent. And where can we find
I just told him to just make something like kind of his take on like a Gialli type theme.
Cool. And where can we find his work? Is it on Mixcloud or?
He has stuff all over, but he has a YouTube channel. I think it's Ray Mattis Presents, but he also has music on Bandcamp for purchase. So yeah, just look up Ray Mattis, Mattis, and you can pretty much find his stuff all over. It's definitely if you love 80s synth kind of stuff, as we all do in our horror movies, it's along those lines. And he's made themes for my Western books that just blew my mind. And I'm like, dude, you did not need to do all this just for a book, let alone a book that I wrote. But he loves to help out, and he's just very, very skilled.
Excellent. Okay, well, look forward to hearing some of that. So again, well, thank you ever so much for coming on the show, David, and hopefully it won't be too long before you're back on. And and thank you for listening to Babysitter Massacre, and we'll catch you next time with some Night Screams. So thank you for listening, and say goodbye to the good people.
Goodbye, good people.
Goodbye.
Sayonara.
Bye.
poop.